Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Members, voter turnout in primary elections is consistently lower than observed turnout levels for general elections. According to the Secretary of State's office, approximately 50% of eligible voters participated in the 2018 general election, while only 28.43% participated in the 2018 primary election. Research also indicates that the youth population has the lowest voter turnout out of any age demographic. The turnout for eligible youth voters was only 27.5% for the 2018 general election in our state. ACA 4 would create an opportunity to engage first-time voters and boost the youth voter turnout by allowing 17-year-olds to vote in the primary election, provided that they will be 18 by the time of the general election. Studies show that voting is habit forming. Once a person votes, he or she is more likely to do so again. Early involvement in the electoral process for first-time voters should be a high priority for this reason. ACA 4 would lay the foundation to build the voting habit at an early age. Allowing 17-year-olds to participate in primary elections would complement the civic education many receive in high school, increasing the likelihood that these students become lifelong voters. The idea is not a new one. Nearly half of states in the U.S. already allow 17-year-olds to participate in primaries and caucuses. First-time voters should have the opportunity to participate in that full election cycle. We believe that we are on strong legal and constitutional footing with this approach, linking the primary with the general. With me today to offer additional comments in support, is Mindy here? Okay, Mindy Romero, Dr. Mindy Romero, I believe, is en route. She is with the California Civic Engagement Project based at USC. Hi there. And we also have two high school students, Naomi Piper Pell and Ella Yitzhaki, to provide the youth perspective.
Okay, well, witnesses in support, go ahead.
Do you want the students to start?
Sure.
Hi, my name is Naomi Piper Pell, and I would first like to thank the Assembly Elections Committee for inviting me here to testify today on such an important topic. I'm a student in the Rio Americano Civitas program, which is here in Sacramento, and I am also a member of the Sacramento Youth Commission. And as a student in Civitas, I study the political process, civic engagement, and political science. I'm glad I can be here today to apply the skills and knowledge I've learned in that program to promote youth civic engagement. In the last few years, young people, including myself, not yet old enough to vote, have become active in the political scene. We have lobbied and testified on critical issues including climate change, healthcare, gun control, and college debt. Though millions of American youth have come together to influence the political landscape, many are restricted from fully participating in our democracy. The March for Our Lives took on anti-gun control politicians and organizations, but many of the young organizers and speakers were unable to take their beliefs to the ballot box. In response, many states, including California, have proposed lowering the voting age to 17 or even 16. With the introduction of Assembly Constitutional Amendment 4, California could join a growing list of states that allow 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the next general election to vote in primaries and special elections. In 23 states, 17-year-olds can vote in primaries and caucuses. Whether the state is Democratic, Republican, or swing, these state legislatures understand that voting young helps form a lifelong habit. According to fairvote.org, quote, "This policy increases youth engagement in the political process by creating an ethos of participation from a younger age. Once a person votes, that person is likely to vote again." Furthermore, at age 17, many students are in the midst of studying government, so they can apply what they've learned about the political process in the voting booth. We must prepare the next generation of voters for the political battles that lie ahead and give them the power of the vote. California youth are some of the most engaged in the country, and they deserve to be able to exercise their constitutional right to vote. The passage of ACA 4 would be a giant step towards increasing youth civic engagement in current events and governmental affairs. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and I urge an aye vote.
Hello, my name is Ella Yitzhaki, and I'm a rising high school senior from San Francisco. This summer, I'm working as an intern for Assemblymember David Chu and Congresswoman Jackie Spear. I've also worked as an elections ambassador with the San Francisco Department of Elections. So I was first introduced to politics in 5th grade. The 2012 election was the first presidential election I could actually understand. I was completely addicted to everything about it. I was addicted to the debates, the campaign speeches, and the news about the candidates. When 2016 rolled around, my love for politics only increased. This time I wasn't just watching, I was forming my own opinions on politics. I wasn't just hearing candidates talk about the Affordable Care Act, I was forming my own stance on it. I wasn't just listening to candidates debate their plans to tackle immigration. I was creating my own plans. Once I reached this level of interest in politics, I couldn't wait to get the chance to fulfill my civic duty and vote. I assumed that the first opportunity I would get to vote in a presidential election would be in the primary. I assumed that because I will be 18 by the general election, I would automatically be eligible to vote in the California primary. I was wrong. Since 8th grade, I have been researching this issue, connecting with legislators on it, and chatting with dozens of my own friends about how this issue affects so many of us. I was able to learn that around half the country has already passed this into law, that few legislators oppose it, and that many of my friends and classmates are just as frustrated as I am about it. Now, as a rising senior, I hope that students after me will get the chance to vote in the primary, regardless of the specific month they are born in. We, as a state, should always encourage people to vote, especially young people. In order to instill the value of voting in the next generation, we must allow them to have every opportunity to let their voices be heard. This is why I, along with many other students, are fighting for ACA 4. We are not fighting to change the voting age per se, but rather to adjust the voting system to be more fair and comprehensive for our state's newest voters. Thank you.
Well, I don't know what I could really add beyond that. You both said it all and so well. So I'm Mindy Romero. I'm the director of the California Civic Engagement Project, now at USC in Sacramento. I think what I'll add is, first off, I'll at the outset say that my research center, we don't formally take positions on bills, but I'm here today to talk about what the research in the field and our research says on this topic, and with the hope that it'll help inform your decisions today. So. You've heard the numbers. The state of civic, actually voter participation, specifically for young people, is low. I won't go over those again. But what we do know is that there are ways to remedy that. A key predictor or key solution to getting young people to participate, helping them to participate, is to help them make that connection to why voting matters for themselves, for their lives, their communities, and why the actual act of voting, what the outcome of that really is. What does that really mean, right? Especially when you're completely new to the electoral process. And so research does suggest, if not directly, at least indirectly, that a bill like ACA 4, voting in the primary, can help make that connection. Right, so for all the reasons that have already been discussed, both in the primary, but in the general, when you know, voting in the general, when you know that you've had a say and there is buy-in in that complete election cycle, can really make a difference for young people. Also, as long as they're properly identified as eligible voters in the primary, we can assume that they're going to get contacted by candidates and get campaign materials. And that all really matters because, especially when you're gaining familiarity in the process, maybe the first time, maybe it's the second time you get those materials and you get that contact, because outreach is always very, very low to young people. That also can make a difference to making it salient and also just remind them that the electoral process is important. And lastly, I'll add, in California, already the law is pre-registration of 16 and 17-year-olds, right, as you all know. And I think there's a real potential here that this law could be a key support to pre-registration efforts. So it's already been very successful, hundreds of thousands, according to our Secretary of State, of young people that have registered. But we know that there still is the question, by the time they turn 18, we want to make sure that they're still motivated, that they're to participate, that they're aware and remember that they were registered, and potentially voting in that primary could be a key connector, if you will, and be an additional motivating factor for voting, but also potentially for registering, especially given if maybe you've registered just before the primary, right, and because you were eligible or somewhere near around that primary. So I think there's real possibilities here, not only in terms of potentially increasing participation and voter turnout levels, but also just making the voting process more salient, as voting is habit forming. We want to make that a solid, relevant process for young people as early as possible. Thank you.
Actually, we are grounded in becoming 18 by the general election. We are legally connected to the age of majority. And so this approach is an incremental one, right? The turning 17 for the primary, so for those individuals who will be 18 by the general, if these voters are going to be participating in selecting from a pool of candidates in the general election when they're 18, again when they're 18 in the general election. They ought to have a chance to shape that pool of candidates in the primary election. We are legally linking to becoming 18 and participating in the primary. In fact, nearly half of states in the country, this is the law in nearly half the states. Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Ohio, South Carolina, just to name a handful, it's already the law. California is behind the curve on this issue. So we're doing great on pre-registration, and so all sorts of efforts that the Secretary of State's office is involved in. But we are truly behind on this issue when we should be leading on the issue. I thank the committee for entertaining the conversation and for the members of the public to surface some of the arguments that we are sure to hear over the next 9 months or so. And with that, I respectfully ask for a vote.